Non-destructive photo editing using Adobe Photoshop. The original version of this photograph kind of looks like the rainbow threw up on it. It's just a bit much. So I'm going to show you how to edit it. So what you need is down here. If you click on this, it says create new fill or adjustment layer. The circle is half black, half white. I'm going to click on it. And what I'm going to pick is black and white. Okay. So let me just hide this. And now if you look at the layer menu, that's the most important thing. If you don't see the layer menu, you're going to have to click on window and make sure the word layers is clicked off. The layer menu is the most important thing right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer menu and I'm going to have to click on this white part. Make sure you're not clicking here, but on the white part. Okay. And I'm just going to hide the menu, the adjustment layer so you can see the original photo still looks like the rainbow threw up on it. Okay. I'm going to just now click on this white part, and black will rip a hole in this paper to allow the color to show through, and white will restore the piece of paper to its original condition. Okay. So you don't use the eraser, you use the brush tool. I'm going to just make this a little smaller so you can see everything. Okay. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Now I can see the toolbar on the left and the layer menu on the right. And now I'm going to make this a little bigger. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to take my brush tool and I need to adjust the brush. So what I want is 0 hardness. The size is pretty good. I'm actually going to make it a little larger, but it's going to be fuzzy around the edges. And this is super, super important. I go to general brushes right here. A soft round brush is fine. But I need to adjust the opacity. Now, don't forget to put the opacity back at 100 when you're done with this exercise, because if you don't, what's going to happen is later on, you're going to be drawing in Photoshop on a totally different project. It's going to remember what the opacity was set at, and you're going to wonder what's wrong with your picture. So I'm going to pull this down to maybe 25%. And now using the black brush to rip a hole in this paper, I'm going to start exposing the color. I'm clicking on my mouse and I'm just painting, and you can see a slight hole is developing. Now you might want to make it more than 25% opaque. So I'll make it 52%. And now the color is slightly more intense because I'm ripping more of a hole. Because I'm only at 52% with the opacity, and because my brush has a fuzzy edge, I'm getting this very subtle look. Now, what happens if I use a bigger brush and I rip a bigger hole and I have more opacity, and I accidentally mess up and go outside the lines? Let me just put it all away at 100%. Okay, so I'm ripping a big hole. You can see the hole being ripped now. I've got some very intense color here. I don't necessarily want the color to be that intense. So I accidentally mess up and I go outside the lines. It looks terrible, right? So what you can do is you're going to switch from black to white. Just hit these 2 little arrows and switch from black to white. Now that I have the white, I'm still using my brush tool. It's still set the same way. And I can now use that to restore what I ripped in the paper. Okay, the white will restore Now I'm going to set my opacity at 100%, and I'm using the black to rip a hole in the paper at 100%. Then I'm changing the opacity to about 75%, and I'm going to be a little bit more subtle out here. And you can see the paper starting to rip here. And then I'm going to change the opacity to maybe 50%. And then around 25%. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a subtle color shift in this flower. So you can actually really play around with how bright or intense you want the colors to be. I'm going to go back to the white. I'm flipping. And I'm going to put the opacity at 100%. And I'm going to restore some of the black and white on this butterfly because it's sort of bothering my eyes. So I'm actually going to make it only have color a little tiny bit around the edges. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to draw a path around the paper and get people to look at different things. You sort of have to decide what you want the focal point of the picture to be. Let me just switch back to black. What you want the the dominant and subdominant forms to be, and how you want a person's eye to go around the paper. So I'm using let me just use the white again, and I'm going to put some black and white back in this picture so it's not quite so intense. And then I can switch to the black again, and this time I'm going to change the opacity again so that it's subtler. So you really have a huge amount of executive control over your work. So you can really bounce the eye of the viewer around the paper in an extremely intentional way. So right now I'm going to the end of every petal and adding a little splash of color. You can do that as well. And when you've pushed it so far that you've overdone it, you just flip the colors back again and you repaint that white in. When you turn in this assignment, it is extremely important that you turn in the layered assignment. In other words, I need to see the top layer with the adjustment layer, and I need to see the bottom layer that looks like the rainbow threw up on it. I need to see both because I need to look at your process. The name of this assignment is non-destructive photo editing for a reason. I want to make sure that you didn't do anything to alter the original photo. Okay? So in addition to the layered document, you also have to resize your image and submit it as a JPEG. So this is what we're going to do. You're going to go image size. We're going to change the resolution to 300, but we do not want 293.3 megabytes when it was 16.9 megabytes because that's ridiculous. Instead, we're going to change the width to 11 inches and the height will also adjust accordingly. So now I'm going to hit OK, and we have a smaller picture that is very, very sharp. And I'll show you that the resolution is 300 pixels per square inch, which is the exact right resolution you want for printing. Now, I'm going to now do File, Export, Export As, and I'm going to pick JPEG. The quality I have at 100%. If you're on a Mac, you would have it at Great, which is the top highest quality. And the scale is 100%. I'm going to hit export, and then I have my JPEG. So it says image 148 already exists. Do you want to replace it? The answer is no. What I'm going to do is I have to rename it. So I'm going to name it, let's see, let me rename it Non-Destructive Photo Editing. Okay, and I'm going to hit save. Upload both your JPEG and your layered Photoshop document to Google Classroom.